Dr. Gio, I just got this question not that long ago. Dr. Gio, red meat, dairy, really bad. I became vegetarian. It's dairy and red meat or animal products of any kind bad for you for prostate cancer. Does it cause prostate cancer? Or if you have it, will it make it worse? That's a fascinating question because, of course, you would say and you would think, and I know why, yes, it does. It's bad for you. Now, everything I'm going to say, it's a combination, of course, of all the research I've ever done. I've been reading diet books for 25 years. I've done every diet. I've also have read and analyzed the research articles, the scientific papers very closely. Okay. Specifically, diets as they relate to prostate cancer. And then I have experience with working with thousands and thousands of patients with lifestyle interventions and in a holistic approach for prostate cancer. So I'm going to bring that all here and I'm going to give it all to you. It's almost like that file in my brain that relates to diet and prostate cancer. I'm just going to pull it out and give it to you. Okay. Everything I know. So here we go. Let me start with this, if I may. I think it's very important not to become overly dogmatic with diets. It seems like diets become a religion or political affiliation. So we don't want that, right? Oh, I'm a vegan person and plant-based and I'm a ketogenic, and it's almost like you belong part of a tribe. Now, I understand that it's human nature to be a little tribal and be part of something, no problem. But I don't necessarily care about that as much for you. I care for you to eat what's right for you and to have a dietary approach that's sustainable. You know how many times I've seen people start a diet, maybe do it for a month, maybe do it for 3 months, maybe do it for a year, and then they give it up, right? That's not what we want, and that's not what's good for you. We are in the long game. If you've been diagnosed with prostate cancer, you're in the long game. You're in the long game, okay? We're not interested in, oh, let me do this diet for 3 months. It's not a weight loss diet, all right? Oh, I have a wedding coming in 3 months. I need to lose some weight. So then after the wedding, it's, you go back to your old ways of doing things. We don't want that. So that's the first thing. It has to be sustainable. Forget about tribalness. Forget about I belong to this group. Who cares? It's about what's right for you. What's dietarily the right approach that you should take. Now, understand that prostate cancer is one component of it, right? You want other things. You don't want to have other cancers developing, right? I always tell my patients, half jokingly, I say, well, let me get this straight. You don't want to die from prostate cancer, right? No, I definitely don't want. I just got this diagnosis. I definitely don't want to die from prostate cancer. But you also don't want to die from anything else. Is that right? Oh, yeah, of course. And you want to live as long as possible. Yeah, sure. And you want the best quality of life for as long as possible. Yeah, of course. Right? So I am looking at the bigger picture as I tell you what I'm about to tell you as it relates to red meat diet and animal sources for prostate cancer. I'm looking at the bigger picture as well as what's good and what's not for prostate cancer. All right. So the first thing, the approach has to be sustainable before we talk about don't eat red meat or eat red meat. Because if you're a red meat eater and then you go vegan for a year and then you crave meat, you can't be around a barbecue because, man, I want to put my teeth in that burger. And it becomes so, look, any lifestyle change, there's a difficulty initially with it. There's no question. Success requires work and discipline and unease and uncomfortability initially, but then it gets easier. It becomes a way of life, which is exactly what I am suggesting here to you today. I am suggesting that you create a lifestyle, not a diet. Besides, I don't like the first three words in the word diet. I don't like those first three words. Diet. I don't want that, right? Lifestyle. Life. Yeah, that's what we want. Lifestyle. Yep, that's good. That's good for me, right? So we want to create a lifestyle. We want to create an identity of healthy living. And that may include whatever, honestly, dietarily. Pizza. And we'll talk about that, breaking the rules. But we want a healthy life. We want a healthy identity that's sustainable and will help you in the long game. Okay? So, first thing, has to be sustainable. Second thing, the real problem is that we're all eating too much, and people with prostate cancer are eating too much. This is before we start talking about don't eat meat or eat meat. You're eating too much. The biggest problem is that we're eating too much. You're eating too much. Okay? So, carbs, low carb, high carbs, low meat, no meat, fish, pescatarian diet, plant-based. You're eating too much. And I know people that are doing plant-based diets that are overweight and they can't lose weight. And if you are heavy, right? If you are heavy, I'm talking about really heavy, that predisposes you to prostate cancer diagnosis. That predisposes you to prostate cancer development. And that predisposes you to prostate cancer progression. So why are we talking about anything other than, hey, let's lose some weight here, if that's you? Okay? That's the first step. So you're eating too much. Practice some level of intermittent fasting. Now, here's the deal. You've heard me say before, man, listen, intermittent fasting is the way to go. Try to reach 16 hours a day of fasting. You can include, when you're in the middle of your fast, you can include water, coffee with no sugar and no milk in it. Tea, no sugar, no milk, and any supplements you take or pharmaceutical meds that you may take, right? That's all. You can include all those things as part of your fast. Then you've heard me say, well, skip breakfast, or at least some of you may skip breakfast. That may be true for me, and that may be true for some of you, but I want to make sure that you listening, because I don't know you all, but I do know that everybody has a different method of eating, and everyone has a different approach towards food and eating. So why am I saying this? Some of you actually need breakfast to function, right? So you can't really function without breakfast and be productive and do the work you do and go to work and work with your family without breakfast. Others can, a little coffee, a little tea, green tea, till 12, 1 o'clock, you do fine, right? So if you need breakfast, no problem. Eat breakfast, but just try to stay in a fasted state for 12 hours, 10, 12 hours, have dinner, and then another 10 to 12 hours of a fasted state. That's right. So we typically don't need more than 2 meals a day. The issue is, and the focus should be, that those 2 meals need to be solid. Those 2 meals need to be solid. You need nutrients, because one of the problems with fasting, and you may know that intermittent fasting is one way, but there are some medicinal approaches to fasting where you fasting, a couple of 3 days a week, or 3 days in 1 week for, 3 days a month, or sometimes a week a month, or a week every quarter. There's different approaches, and I think there's value to all of it for most people. But again, is it sustainable? I've fasted. I used to fast quite a bit, and it is great, and you get clarity. But it's not something that that is sustainable for most people, and you need energy. So I don't have the luxury, neither do you, of fasting for a couple of feel like crap and not work and not get on this podcast and not see patients and see patients at an optimal level, where I'm with energy and focused. So I cannot afford to do that. There are fasting clinics out there, and then that may work, right? And certainly that there's therapeutic components to it. Throughout history, people have fasted. Takeaway: we're all eating too much. Find a methodology in your lifestyle where you can fast for 10 to 12 hours. And lastly, as it relates to fasting, it is best ultimately to have your last meal early and fast throughout the night. And I'm talking about specifically for prostate cancer, likely for other things as well. What am I saying here? You want to end your dinner, your supper, as early as possible, so that now you have 2 to 3 hours before going to bed in a fasted state. Then you're sleeping for 6 to 8 hours in a fasted state, and you have a couple of hours when you wake up fasted. So that's better than eating late at night right before going to bed and having food to digest while you're sleeping. A, that interferes with quality of sleep, and B, that's not necessarily fasting. Okay, so make your dinners as early as possible. Dr. Gio, I am 53 years old, prostate cancer diagnosis. I don't want prostate cancer to recur. I have a family. I have, 3 young kids at home. Sometimes we have meals that start at 9 p.m. because that's the way life is. I want you to have meals with your family. I do. So I want you to know the rules. The rule is here, or the guideline, I should say, because rules are like you can't break the rule. Well, these are guidelines. Make your last meal as early as possible. For some of you, that's 9 p.m. because it is important to have meals with your family. Try to have those meals earlier if possible. But sometimes by the time kids get out of school, they have sports afterwards. They get home around 7:30, shower. We're talking 8:30 sometimes. That's when you have a meal with your family, right? So have it early, have it when you have it. Try to maybe there's family time, not every night, a couple of times a night, a couple of times a week. Well, then the times that you don't have your family dinners, then have it earlier. So that's what you want to do. So sustainability first. Number 2 is not what to eat. We haven't even gone there, is when to eat, right? Don't eat so much. All right, let's get down to the meat of things. All pun intended. All right. Are meats bad for prostate cancer? Here's the deal, folks. Here's the deal. And it's something that I've been putting a lot of thought into. I've read every paper. Here's the deal. We need muscle. We need to have muscle and keep as much muscle as possible as we get older. Because the number one cause of mortality in aging people, I'd argue, is muscle wasting or sarcopenia. Remember, you're not just interested, right, in not dying from prostate cancer. You're interested in not dying from anything prematurely, and you want to sustain good quality of life. Well, you need muscle to do that. And as we age, if we're not careful, we're going to have muscle wasting. Okay? So I say that because it turns out that animal products do help you with keeping muscle, because they have not only, so here's the argument that I hear, and I was in a debate once, and well, you could get good quality protein from a plant-based diet. I've talked about this before, so I'm not going to belabor, but the takeaway is this. It's not a matter, there are many amino acids and things in proteins. There are about 3 that are called branched chain amino acids, primarily actually 1, but 3 that contribute to muscle development and muscle production that you really find either mostly in meats or animal products, or what's called a Diaz score. Stands for something, but Diaz is not only that the product, the food, contains all the protein, but is the protein digestible, and does it have the right type of protein? So things like eggs, and I know you've read that eggs are bad for prostate cancer. I've written on that. Dairy and animal products, they all have high Diaz score, which means that it has all the proper protein, all the right amino acids that's absorbable to create muscle. Okay? So Dr. Gio, I've been vegan and plant-based for 5 years because that's what I heard I need to do. Are you suggesting that I need to eat meats and dairy and eggs? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm suggesting that you live the lifestyle that is right for you, that's sustainable. I want you to eat less, and I want you to eat enough protein that contain what's called the branched chain amino acids, primarily leucine, isoleucine, and valine. Branched chain amino acids. Because these are the type of proteins that are involved in creating muscle. And if you're a man on androgen deprivation therapy and you don't have testosterone, I want you to have muscle. So, and if you're over 60, that's when all the sarcopenia really kicks in. I want you to develop muscle. Okay? Now, of course, you need to exercise. You need weight-resistant exercise to create muscle, right? So it's not just eating meats and things that's creating. Are you suggesting for me to be in a carnivore diet? Are you suggesting for me to be in a paleo diet? I'm not suggesting any of those things. I am saying that, well, let me tell you exactly what I'm saying. A, when you look at the literature, it does not necessarily suggest that animal products are bad for prostate cancer. I think the main reason is because no one food is either good for prostate cancer or good for any disease. And no one food is bad for prostate cancer or bad for any disease. That's an oversimplification. Just like soy has been demonized by the paleo group and the meat eaters as if it's a bad food. It's not. Oh, it's estrogenic. Well, but there are many foods that are estrogenic. Soy is one of them. So it's not a bad food for prostate cancer either. Right? Soy is not, and meats are not. When you look at the literature, what it highly suggests is the overeating of meat, A. B, the charring of the meats when it's grilled or broiled, so that all the blackening on the meats is a problem. And processed meats like cold cuts and ham and bacon and those things, those are probably not great because they have all kinds of ingredients and nitrites and things, and that might be carcinogenic, according to research. So that's what the literature really shows. Okay, as it relates to dairy, there is an association, not causation, association to dairy and prostate cancer. So what I tell patients is, you know what? Give up the dairy. A, you don't really need it. B, there might be some significant link with dairy, with consuming dairy. Give up the dairy. If you're going to have coffee, have coffee. If you're going to have tea, have tea. Have things without dairy. Have things without sugar. Just adapt to it. But let's just say, Dr. G, I love just a touch of dairy in my coffee, just a little cream, no problem. The poison is in the dose. What's the number one rule? You're eating too much. So eat less. So a touch of cream in your coffee, that's not a big deal. Okay? That's fine. Consume a plant-based diet. Dr. Gio, but I thought this is the other one, right? A plant-based diet, folks, does not exclude animal products unless you want it to be unless you want it excluded. But a plant-based diet focuses on plant-based foods. So eat more plant foods. That doesn't necessarily exclude meats unless you want it to. Now, if you are going to stay vegan, which means no dairy, no animal products, no problem. But I think that you need to consume, you need to be even more careful with um, consuming certain foods that are higher in protein. So beans are higher and contain some of these branched chains, not a lot. So it's very difficult. It is very difficult to keep muscle from a plant-based diet. You have to be very meticulous. So beans are one way of doing that. They contain some, or you can take branched chain amino acid pills or protein. Okay, that's another way of doing it. And that's another. So you can stay plant-based, but make sure you get the branched chain amino acids in, right, to keep muscle. And that's a very important component of things. In summary, dairy, you may want to give up. Just a touch of cream, not a big deal. Easy on the cheese, because it's more than I don't know. If you have a lot of cheese, then it might be a problem. Again, the poison is in the dough. So easy, cheese and wine parties, enjoy it, but just don't overdo it. Eggs, it seems like you can have about 4 eggs a day. Not a day, a week. That's about, according to research, the amount that you can have before potentially correlation or association, not causation, potentially where there might be a problem. Again, you don't want to demonize any one food. And by the way, I am not talking here about ethical animal rights reasons. That's not an area that I'm actually really versed on. So I cannot talk on that. I'm not talking about environmental components here. There are environmental components of the production of meats, right? But I'm not really versed on that. I'm really 100% focused on your health and how do you live longer and better with age despite prostate cancer. I'm 100% focused on that. And if you eat less meat, because one of the things that we're all doing is we're overeating, then that should be good for the environment too, wouldn't it? So that's that. If you are going to eat red meat, eat red meat, don't char it. A good stew is good. Careful with grilling or too much grilling. About a couple of times a week is fine. Fish is actually your best animal resource, animal muscle resource, and salmon is actually beneficial. So if you have to choose one, choose fish or salmon. Plant-based, meaning, add a lot of vegetables, particularly your cruciferous, your Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, right? Kale, all good. And dairy, leave it out. A little touch here and there is fine. A little cheese here and there, if you want to, it's fine. Okay, that's sustainable. And milk or any other type of dairy product, again, or cheese, I meant to say, or eggs about, 4 a week with the yolk. You don't have to exclude the yolk if you want to. I'm not saying you should. I am saying is, let's get more of these branched chain and amino acids in your system because you need it for muscle production, along with weightlifting and weight resistance exercise and exercise in general. I am saying that. Okay? If you want to stay plant-based, no problem. But just know that plant-based diet does mean eating vegetables. Right? Like, include vegetables. I see a lot of plant-based people, they call themselves plant-based, but they're not eating vegetables. Include vegetables. Get the amino acids in, maybe through pills. Be very strict on getting enough protein in from plant-based sources, and live the rest of the lifestyle that includes exercise, sleep, and targeted nutraceuticals. Okay? So I hope this is helpful to you. I'm sure it is. Please share with friends and that you may like at your prostate cancer support groups. Anything is helpful. It helps with the algorithms, of course. Go ahead and subscribe to your platform of wherever you listen to this podcast. This is Dr. Gio signing off. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode.